Have you seen a pattern of common mental health issues amongst your clients?
There may be an athlete who kind of starts off with the thought of like, what if I fail this race? And what is failure exactly? And to them, maybe failing is either like losing a race or like falling. In reality, the definition of failure can be much broader. There have been races where I have like decided that I'm going to lose before I even start. So there'll be competitors that are too scary or they're too successful, and I just say there's no chance that I can beat them. There have been races where I have physically hurt like hell and performed phenomenally because my mind felt good. I try and hold friends and family like super close and um, just like have conversations with them and talk.
Do you meditate?
I'm gonna get called out here. So no.
Malvika, if you want to begin with telling us how did you get into swimming and what was your journey like into becoming an international swimmer who still has, if I'm not wrong, national records?
Yeah. Thanks, Saurabh. Thanks for thinking of me for this podcast. I'm super happy to be here.
My
So
pleasure.
my thanks. My journey with swimming was actually a very interesting one. So I grew up in Bangalore, so literally in this house where you can see me, and we were super fortunate to have a pool in the apartment complex itself. So ever since I was like a baby, I think 2 years old or something like that. My parents used to take me to the pool and we used to just kind of like splash around and have fun. And very quickly, they realized that the water is something that I enjoyed. Not because of how happy I was when I was in the water, that was one thing, but because of how much I would scream when they tried to take me home. Like I would just start like screaming, shouting, crying, and scream. Like it was people were getting like concerned, like what is happening to this child. So I just, yeah, I love being in the water constantly, and that's kind of how I got started. So from there, my dad actually taught me in the same apartment pool, just like the fundamentals of how to float and swim and things like that. Because he was not like a serious swimmer, but he knew how to swim. Like he had practiced a bit, and he had even competed a little, if I'm not wrong. So he knew the basics. So he kind of showed me the ropes, and then I started like formal coaching and formal training in the same apartment pool. So there was this nice coach who used to come and like coach a bunch of us. And of course, it was super fun at that time. We would just like laugh, joke, play around, and also still learn like the fundamentals of swimming. Then I joined my school's swim team. So that was something that I was in the second standard. So we started having PT class, and there in our school also we had a pool. So I was again there and like splashing around, having fun. And one of the coaches there like was able to identify like this girl
Hmm.
seems to
The
be like,
potential that you
yeah,
have.
yeah,
Yes.
exactly. She seems to be
Hmm.
like she knows something. And
Hmm.
then he would write like notes in my almanac every day saying, okay, let her stay for after school practice, let us kind of put some structure to this. And my parents and I both, like, we ignored it for like a long time. We were just like, hey, what is
Oh.
this? And we don't know what it is. Like, she should come home and sleep. And I was very particular about sleep. I still am. So I was like, after school, come home, sleep, relax. What is this our 1.5 hours of staying after school for practice and all that? So we ignored. But he was so persistent. Like he would keep sending, like week by week, he would keep writing. And then one day, my mom, she was the one who needed to be convinced. So she said, okay, let us give this a shot. Then I joined that school team and learned a little bit more about swimming and started competing a little bit, started winning a few medals here and there. And the coach very quickly, he's a great guy. He very quickly realized that this was maybe not the ideal environment for me. Like I had outgrown it a little
Hmm.
bit. So he suggested like, let us start club training. So club level training. And he's recommended this like club pool. And It was quite close by to home, like half an hour from home, and he said, "Let's start there." So that just happened to be like one of the best clubs in India, and it's still the best clubs in
Wow.
India. So I was very fortunate that way, where I just had like pools growing up like super close by to me. So
Hmm.
I didn't have to relocate. I didn't have to do anything to like take it more seriously. So then I joined that club, and I remember the moment I walked in, you see that full like Olympic sized pool and
Correct.
senior swimmers, and they were so rhythmic. Like I remember the sound of the rhythm that they were swimming, and I was like, my God, is this what I have to do? And there also their coaches were lovely. They were very supportive. They made it fun. And again, like I was having fun with it. I had fun with it through the end. So then I started competing. I made my first national team at 10. I think I was 10 years old, and I was like a national gold medalist at that point, and still didn't know what was happening. Like I was just like, oh, swimming is fun, and I'm like enjoying. And then it slowly started building up. I started like breaking records throughout different age groups, and then competed internationally. I think just like 4 years later, actually no, when I was 16 years old, 2014 was when I competed internationally for the first time and saw all of these like big names and like
Hmm.
in person, like they were actual human beings, and was too nervous to ask them for like photos and things. But I was like, okay, this is fantastic. Um, and yeah, I just kind of kept going from there. I never really lost that love that I had for the sport, and I think
That
that's
is
what just,
amazing.
yeah,
Hmm.
kept me going through the end. Yeah.
Was also your potential and like the circumstances were so perfectly timed and right that like everything fell into the right place,
I
right?
swear, yeah. And that kind of clicked for me now as I was thinking about it. I've always thought about it in the back of my mind, but this, yeah, it's so true. Like it was just kind of laid out.
So speaking about like anxiety and mental health issues, were there any issues that you had faced during your childhood?
Yeah. So to be honest, like I've thought about this, mental health as sort of a vocabulary term is something that I have fully understood only very recently.
Got it.
I'm sure
Hmm. Right.
there were things that I was thinking of at that age that maybe I was a little anxious or maybe I was a little nervous, but never was able to actually like put words to it at that time. And I think it definitely existed. Like I mean, I could feel butterflies in my stomach like before racing. Little like thoughts would race, and kind of those little fears of what if I swim badly or what if I don't win. Those were there, but as a 10-year-old, they just didn't exist. Like I mean, it was just there, and I went there, and my sole purpose was to have fun because I was clueless. Fortunately, I was clueless. No one was really putting a lot of pressure on me saying like, you're at the nationals, there are all these like good swimmers there and all of that. I don't remember much of that. I was just like, another pool, another state. It was in Kolkata, so lots of fun memories there, and I just like, yeah, I'm gonna go do my thing. So I think later on, maybe during teenagers and things like that, when I started realizing like what I was actually doing, that's when it started becoming like I started noticing these nerves a little more. And it was like at that point I was like some eyes were on me. People knew that I was a good swimmer, and there were expectations, and that kind of sort of split that my mindset between I love the sport and I need to perform well as well. So yeah, there it sort of started uh, tingling. There are races where the nerves have helped for sure. There are races that the nerves have hurt. Um, but I think that yeah, childhood. There was not really a lot of attention that I was paying to that. That it may have existed, but I just didn't bother me as much. But definitely later on, it's sort of being something that I do experience. Like I have lot of anxiety, a lot of overthinking, a lot of fear of failure. So yeah, definitely.
I think what I love about your story is you are having fun.
Yeah.
And like when you're having fun, like that is when you perform without any like anything which is holding you back.
Yeah,
And then once like life happens, you get into your teenage, get into your adulthood is where like
yeah,
then all those voices start coming into your head, and then
yeah,
so
absolutely.
that is great. I think I love that story. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, thanks.
So now you are probably the first person that I have met in my life. And trust me, I am an extrovert. I meet a lot of people
Yeah.
who is a sports psychologist.
Yeah.
So, very interested to know that moment where you were like, oh, yes, this is where I
Hmm.
want to like now pursue my career as a sports psychologist.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. So, I think you're also not alone in knowing very few sports psychs. So, it is a newish field and it's a very
Correct.
interesting one. So, for
Yeah,
me,
it is. Yes.
uh, I think it was not a single like aha moment, but a more gradual one. So, it
Mm.
was really in college where I started like understanding the link between the mental side of performance and the physical side of performance. So, um, just to kind of explain, I had the option of moving to the US when I was 18 to compete in the NCAA. So, that was something that was a really great opportunity that I was super privileged to have. And that's important context because up until that point, up until I was 18, I was used to the Indian system of coaching where it's very sort of top down, do what you're told, listen, follow instructions, come to practice every day. And then in the US, it was quite different actually. The coach was a lot more communicative. He was open to feedback. He was kind of he would listen to things that I said, and the training was also different. So the Indian training for me was very volume based. Like the more kilometers that you swim, the faster that you would become. That showed results for sure. Whereas in the US, it was very sort of more quality. Like we wouldn't swim as much volume, but we would focus on a lot of the technical aspects, which I think was good for my, where I was at that age as well. So, so very two different systems, and then the team started being very open about mental health, and they started talking about things like you said, I'm feeling really nervous before the race, or I there was a lot of body image issues as well. That's something that will become an interesting point later on. So people were very vocal about that, and there were resources for support. So for example, like one of my teammates who was struggling with her mental health went and approached the coach about it. She approached us and she approached the coach about it. The coach was like, treated this as something that's super normal and referred her to get help. And that was kind of an eye-opening moment for me because I had never seen anything like that before. Simultaneously, I also majored in psychology academically. So I really found that class really interesting, the first class that I took. And I said, okay, this is such a cool field to me. Then slowly I sort of started making parallels between what I was learning in psychology and what I was doing in the pool. So things like where in the brain anxiety develops, where, what happens physiologically when you're feeling nervous, all of that started getting cemented like theoretically in my mind, and then I was seeing applications in the pool as well. So I knew that those two things were related, but it was only during my fourth year, my final year of college, where I realized that sport and psychology can be combined. So I did my undergrad thesis on area related to sports psychology. So I was examining cultural differences in body image issues and motivation levels between Indian and American swimmers. So that was like such an amazing project. And over the course of that project, I realized that one, sports psychology is a thing. Two, body image is the area that I want to specialize in within that field. And three, there are so many cultural differences between how mental health is experienced in India versus in the US. And then all of that led up to that moment saying like, okay, yeah, sports psychology is a thing and I want to do it. And fortunately, my advisors, my thesis advisors planted that seed in my mind as well. They said, sports psych is something that you could explore. So then, yeah, I decided to pursue my master's uh, at Boston University. So that was in counseling and sports psychology. So that was also something that was very important to me. Is I didn't want a program that was exclusively focused on sports psychology or performance enhancement, because that just didn't resonate with me. Because I don't believe that you can enhance performance without looking at a human being as a whole. So I wanted a program that had a mental health focus and a subspecialty in sports psychology. So yeah, BU ended up being like the perfect program, and yeah, I learned a ton there. So that program further like specialized that niche, saying like I had a vague interest in like research and academics up until that point. But at BU, I started working like one on one and in groups with athletes. So then there, that interest became further specialized, saying I want to do this face to face work with athletes. So all of that, I think, like led up to where I am today, and I'm still figuring it out. So we don't know how much it's going to change further, but yeah.
I feel the main thing is you listen to your gut and intuition, which never lies. It
Yeah.
knows what is right for you and where you are going. So kudos to that. And also, it's a very unique life timeline that you have. It's
Mm,
a path which not a typical Indian kid has. So
yep.
that's amazing.
For sure. For
But
sure.
I want to further ask you that, yeah, definitely mental health plays a big part in an athlete's career as well. But like to illustrate it, how, like, also when you spoke that you did your thesis on how body image issues affect an athlete, do you want to like tell us more about what exactly it is, how that helps, how that affects an athlete?
Yeah, for sure. So, um, the mind and the body are two like very closely related things. And I think as athletes, we are often told to focus more heavily on the physical side of things, because
Correct.
whatever is going on in your mind, eventually the body will support you through. Um, and that is true to an extent, but I think it leads to a lot of neglect of the mental side. Because, for example, it can be as simple as like your brain can tell you not to swim fast and you won't swim fast. Or uh, an even more interesting example is if I ask you to, like, whatever you do, don't think of a red apple with a green stem. Like, whatever you do, don't think of it. The only thing that you will think of is the red
Is that
apple, right?
yes?
Or you will try to imagine like a specific, like another object that
Correct.
fills your mind, but then eventually that red apple will come back. So the mind works the same way. A lot of times the like races or competitions are uh, I wouldn't say won or lost based on the mind, but the impact can change quite drastically depending on how your mind feels. So for me personally, there have been races where I have like decided that I'm going to lose before I even start. So there'll be competitors that are too scary or they're too successful, and I just say there's no chance that I can beat them. There have been races where I have physically hurt like hell and performed phenomenally because my mind felt good. So, for example, I really love this story because it's a core part of who I am. So, I was at the Asian Age Group Championships. So, this is all of Asia but divided amongst age groups. And this was something that was happening in 2016, I believe. So, at that point, right before that competition, I had just set a national record in the 1500 freestyle. So this was a time that um, no one else in Indian history had swum before. And I was like, I feel great, I feel phenomenal. I'm going to go and smash it again. And I was warming up for that race and just kind of feeling phenomenal in the water, so good. And I'm a swimmer who sort of I close my eyes when I swim, so I turn off that sense to sort of get in tune with the body. Um, so I was turning, I mean, I closed my eyes and then I was warming up, and then before I knew it, whacked. So I whacked someone who was swimming from the opposite side, and uh, yeah, they essentially like hit my eye part, and the goggle ended up sort of smashing, and it could have been worse, but it was still
Hmm.
quite bad. It was as sort
Yeah.
of it was a black
The
eye
bruise.
essentially.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
So I was like, oh my
Hmm.
God, I have this race in like 15 minutes. Am I going to be able to swim? Blah blah blah. Um, and super like I went from feeling super confident to like terrified in like a matter of
Hmm.
seconds.
Hmm.
Then talk to my coaches, like talk to my parents, like what am I supposed to do? Am I going to be able to swim? So we decided, let's give it a shot. Like I know it's hurting, we'll give it a shot. And this race is not a short one. It takes around 17 and a half minutes to swim. So we said, okay, I know you can do it. Let us give it a shot. So I did. And that race ended up being like completely pain free. I was on like cloud nine. I still felt phenomenal. And the time itself was quite decent. It was around like 7-ish seconds away from that national record that I had just set, which is not a big margin in the 1500. So um, that race kind of like really showed me, even if your body is like physically wrecked, your mind has so much power. It was just that mindset saying that, okay, I know I can do this and I'm going to give it a shot, that made that race like possible. So, yeah, I think that way, that sort of link between the mind and the body is so strong. And people, if they tap into that area of their psyche, there's so much that they can do, sport wise or just well being wise. So, does that answer your question?
It definitely,
Okay.
definitely does.
Okay.
Because I feel just to draw an analogy is what I've heard is like a war is always won before it's even fought.
Yeah,
So similar to that, like even if it's like you were in the right mindset, you knew that you you are like you were confident in there,
yeah.
and then we feel that it's like more of a physiological game, but it's also a big psychological game as well, right?
Absolutely,
Any
absolutely.
sport that you play.
100%, 100%. Because it's so much like at the end of the day, your brain controls what your body does and how it
Correct.
responds. So
Hmm.
they both have to be on the same team if you want
Same
to,
page. Yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. If you want to perform well.
Amazing. Okay, switching gears a bit now to what you are currently doing, what you currently practice. So, when you said that you do counseling,
Yeah.
like, or therapy, how is it different than traditional therapy?
Hmm.
Or, like, is it, but if it is different than traditional therapy,
Right.
yes, maybe an illustration, no, maybe an illustration to like understand this better.
Yeah, yeah, great question. So, yeah, there are definitely similarities and differences between counseling and sports psych. So, just to kind of explain that in a nutshell, uh, there is clinical psychology, which focuses a lot on mental health disorders. So things like
Correct.
clinical anxiety, depression, maybe OCD, things like that. There is
Yes.
counseling psychology that focuses on just overall well-being and life-related stressors and relationships and subclinical levels of anxiety and things like that. And there is sports psychology, which focuses on exclusively performance enhancement. So we call it mental skills training. So things like goal setting, visualization, imagery, things like that are kind of the facet of sports psychology. So uh, my area is an interesting one because I combine the fields of counseling, which is like overall life well-being, and
Correct.
sports psychology, which is the mental performance side of things. So, like I was mentioning earlier, the like performance enhancement side of things felt a little inauthentic to me. Like if I focused on that exclusively, it felt a little
Hmm.
inauthentic to me because
Hmm.
if someone is coming in saying like I'm feeling really nervous before a race, and that nervousness, like it's happening like even outside of sport, and I'm not sure what to do about it. It feels a little superficial for me to say, okay, just calm down. Let's, practice breathing. Let's practice
Correct.
imagery so that you can
Hmm.
go there and race well. Whereas I think it's a lot more holistic for me in my approach to kind of understand where that anxiety or where that nervousness may be coming from, and maybe a little bit of what led to it, and bring awareness to that part first. to get a little theoretical with it. So my orientation is acceptance and commitment therapy as well as somatic therapy. So acceptance commitment focuses on one, accepting that pain and challenges are part of human existence, and focused on approaching those pains and challenges rather than avoiding them, because a lot of times when we try and avoid pain or situations that make us nervous, in reality that that pain never really goes away, or it just becomes bigger. So that's kind of how I help athletes kind of understand or learn more about themselves and their fears before jumping to the maybe intervention side of like, how do we tackle this and how do we kind of help you overcome it. Because my goal at the end of the day is to make the athlete or the client like self-reliant and to make me jobless. So I don't want to create like a dependence thing. So if I were to say like, okay, let's do this and this, maybe to some level there will be a reliance saying, okay, she's going to tell me exactly what to do and I'm going to do it. Whereas I'm trying to sort of just play the facilitator here. Like, you give me a part of your brain and I reflect that part back to you in a way that um, uh, you know may make sense or highlight some of the things that you're going through, and you get to make sense of it, or we get to make sense of it together. So yeah, the counseling side helps with the sort of general well-being, and the sport side is just kind of a supplement to that. And I always think that happy athletes are good athletes. So as long as they're enjoying the sport, the performance will come. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the difference between sort of, or differences and similarities between general therapy and sports psych.
So I have felt this myself, which I feel the way that you said holistic healing is more important to like, because post therapy, anything that I do in my life, for example, be it like have a chat with my friends, or like do like play sports in general, or like at work, I feel I'm able to give my 100% or able to focus,
Hmm.
because there's not a lot of voices there which are like
Yeah.
trying to scare me or like make me nervous. The nerves still are there, like it's a part of life
Yep.
that's gonna happen, but now I'm able to like see through it mindfully, be aware of what is happening. And
That's
like with
beautiful. Yeah.
with with athletes, like things come down to like such like that one moment of performance. It's definitely very important, right, to like be mindful and then to be able to like focus in that one moment.
Yep. Yep, for sure. And I love the way that you were describing your experiences in therapy. It really sounds like you have a good therapist, and I hope to hear that from some of my clients too. Like the way that you were just saying, like it helps me sift through the voices and
Right.
sort of observe them and not let it kind of bog you down so much. So I think that that's beautiful. Yeah, yeah. I don't know if you had a question in there. Did you have a question?
No, the question that I have, the question that I have now, I did not
Yes.
have a question back then, but the
Okay.
question that I have now is, have you seen a pattern of uh, common mental health issues amongst your clients? Not like to reveal the details, but
Hmm.
like anything that you've observed and like,
Yeah, so I see definitely a lot of overthinking for sure. Athletes are
hmm,
incredibly smart people. Their brains are super like geniuses, and that
correct.
can be like a double-edged sword sometimes too, where you think a lot and you're able to identify exactly what it is that you're struggling with, but it's so hard
Hmm,
to kind of maybe break a pattern or create that change. So for example, there may be an athlete who kind of starts off with the thought of like, what if I fail this race? And in reality, what is failure exactly, like what does it mean to fail? And to them, maybe failing is either like losing a race or like falling during the start or something like that. In reality, the definition of failure can be much broader. Like it can be uh, you know having a race that day and like not showing up or something like that, right? It can be
correct.
something that doesn't align with their values is something that's failure. Like if
Failure.
they
Love that
see
definition. Yeah.
themselves that they're an honest person, and maybe they kind of were dishonest at some time, like whatever that might be, there's a much broader definition of success and failure. But athletes can kind of tend to equate success to winning and failure to losing, and that leads to a lot of sort of negative thinking and a lot of overthinking. So yeah, that way it's a double-edged sword. So that what is good about it is, by reflecting that these thoughts may not be the most helpful or may not be the best use of energy, can actually work wonders. So like for example, one of the things I love doing is to focus on like controlling the controllables. So a lot of athletes, like
Yeah.
myself included, they tend to spend a lot of time worrying about what the competitor is doing, how they are going to impact the race, things like that. And that in reality, like unless you go and like physically, shake up that competitor, you're not going to have like any control of what they do. So rather, it's much more productive to kind of focus on the things that you've been doing for
Doing.
so
Yeah.
long at practice, because that crucial moment is a result of the years or months or however long that you've spent training. And what you actually do there is something that you've known for so long, and reminding them of that familiarity is something that can be helpful as well. So you control what you can control, focus on the familiar stuff, forget the rest, like let it go. Spending time worrying about it is going to be a not the best use of energy. So be your own cheerleader, be someone who supports you, and don't be like your own enemy.
Right.
So yeah. So they are smart people. It's just to use the brains to help them, and to try to make that happen most of the time.
Switching from nerves to now, also about like there would be times where you might have felt not so motivated, and you must have also
Hmm.
maybe worked with clients who are like in that phase. I think there is a phase that comes where you're like not so motivated. How do you cope up with it, and
Yep.
like how do you bring yourself out of it? Like any specific practices or like any pattern as a solution?
Yeah, definitely. So, motivation psychologically is something that fluctuates constantly. It's something that
Correct.
really goes up and down, not only day to day, but like minute to minute, hour to hour. It's something that can quite drastically change. And um, I first really try to validate that in my athletes. Like, there will be days where you will feel like your motivation is like close to zero, and continuing to show up to practice that day, or continuing to uphold that kind of commitment that you made to yourself, is the one of the bravest things that you can do. Because there will be days where your motivation is at 10 out of 10, you feel super
Peak.
energized, and you go there, and I won't say it's easy, but it's something that you'll remember as being like a good experience, like a positive experience. Maybe you performed really well that day, but you will also remember the days where you really didn't feel like getting out of bed, and waking up at 4:30 in the morning, going to a practice and physically exhausting yourself. Like, there have been so many days where I felt like that. But I think that those days, they show your mind and your body that you are committed to achieving your goals, you're committed to performing, even on the days where it gets hard, even on the days where you don't feel like doing it. Because if you wait till your motivation gets to a 10 out of 10, or if you wait until your anxiety gets to a 0 out of 10, that's probably, one, realistically not going to happen, and two, reinforces to your mind that you're not capable of handling difficult things or difficult situations. So it's these days, like the days where the motivation is low, it's days where the nervousness is super high, and still going there and doing the thing that you're doing sends a very powerful message to your body, because you'll remember that, like, I think there's a quote that is coming to mind, like, you win 100% of the battles you've ever fought. And
Correct.
that's something that it can be a good reminder. So yeah, motivation is never going to be stable, but
Stable. Yeah.
it's something that makes the easy days feel fun, and the harder days feel powerful, make you feel powerful. So yeah,
There's a beautiful quote which I recently heard about discipline.
yeah,
So when it says that discipline is the strongest form of self-love,
mm-hmm.
because you're not relying on anything, even though
Yeah,
you are like at the lowest level of your motivation,
yep,
you are saying that, okay, I still want to achieve that goal. I am going there,
yep,
no matter what my motivation level is, whatever it is, like
right.
I'm pushing myself to go out there and like thinking of the longer term.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that quote as well. It's um yeah, gives you a lot of power. It gives you a lot of
Hmm.
power
Yeah,
that may otherwise be taken up by external stuff.
yeah.
So it's beautiful.
You're
Yeah,
switching, you're switching something which you think is not in your control to something which is in your control, and then you can
exactly,
100% like then give your best.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, super well said. Yeah,
Love that. Okay. This is a question which I have continuously thought of, like as a psychologist, okay?
yeah,
I have been on the other side where I have taken therapy.
yeah,
I have I have unloaded my thoughts to a psychologist. So
right.
I am working with just one psychologist, but a psychologist works with 10 other clients. So like, do you ever feel mentally drained?
Hmm. Yeah, I think there are definitely days where it can be emotionally exhausting. Like it is emotionally exhausting work, and
Hmm.
it's not because of the clients being too much. Like that's a very important distinction I want to make. It's not that the client's experiences are too much for me to handle or too, complex or anything like that. That's not it. I think it's where the exhaustion comes from is being able to kind of show up in the space fully, make sure that you're giving the client the space and attention that they deserve, and also kind of helping them in the best way that you can. So that like I didn't realize how exhausting that would be, because up until that point
Hmm.
I was used to physical exhaustion. Mental
Correct.
exhaustion
Hmm.
is not some, or overwhelm maybe is not something that I was used to. So uh, thankfully I've had a good like support system. I think having a good support system is so important in this work. So people that like care about me, whether that's friends, whether that's family, and also professional support like through supervision, and other colleagues and things like that. So, all therapists in the initial point of their career, as well as um, ideally throughout their career, have a supervisor, and that person is someone that you can kind of share your experiences with, and they help you through, roadblocks or things that maybe we would have missed and things like that. And that helps for sure. And on the other sort of non-professional side, for me it has been very fulfilling to like have hobbies, have friends who are not therapists, have like once I've moved back to India, people who like knew me before I was a therapist, because that was very affirming. um, and they just remind me like I'm Malvika, I have interests, I am a therapist, but that's not like the entirety of my
The entire.
existence.
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm. Hmm.
that really helps. So things like just switching it off, or having a end point of my work day, or spending time just like doing some random things. Like I really love video games and uh, playing with my brother and things like that. So all of that definitely helps. And it's important for us to engage, or like for me to engage in those practices, so that I can like show up the next day and fully with every session. So yeah, it's a great question.
So it's like it all comes down to the people. Okay, so a last couple of questions for you.
Yes.
Number one is, how does Malvika take care of her mental health personally? And if there are any specific practices that you practice on like a daily basis
Hmm.
or weekly or monthly basis consistently.
Yeah, that is a good question. So I feel like I'm going to be brutally honest here. A lot of the things that
We
I
love
kind
that.
of okay, good. A lot of the things that I like try and sort of say to clients is very hard for me to practice by myself.
Mm,
So for example, like things like journaling, things like
mm,
mindfulness is so challenging, and I'm still trying to figure out why. Uh, but that kind of makes me appreciate my clients a lot more because I'm just imagining how, brave they are to be so vulnerable enough to try these things. But that's something that constantly plays on my mind. Like, okay, you're saying so much, you also need to like do the stuff, like walk the walk. So
yeah.
recently, that's something
Mm,
that I've started kind of giving it a fair shot. Like, I journal a lot. I try to do it at least once a week, and I have started working out again. I started exercising again, which has been really helpful. And That's something that I kind of took a step back from for a while because it was challenging to kind of re-enter that space. But ever since I have, I'm like, my God, all these fears that you're making up in your mind are like so dumb. Like you're just going there and doing things that you've known how to do for years. So it doesn't matter how long it takes. So that has been really helpful, moving my body again. And of course, like therapy is like, you can't therapize yourself. So it's like tickling yourself. You try
correct.
tickling yourself, it's not something that's going to work. So that's why, again, having like a super strong support system is so important to me. Like I try and hold friends and family like super close and um, just like have conversations with them and talk to them and yeah, things like that. Like for example, my brother is still competing and he we go to the pool to like my mom, dad, and I go to the pool to pick him up every single day. So that's become kind of like a ritual to just kind of have that conversation time. So yeah, so still my like walking the walk is definitely a
Getting
work
there.
in
Mm.
progress. Yeah, but these things have been helpful so far.
Do you meditate?
I'm gonna get called out here. So no, I really try. I really try, sort of like it just is so. I feel like my athlete self screams at me because any kind of slowness and any kind of like intentional work is very hard for me. Um, but I have tried. It's still a work in progress. So the ways that I like practicing slowness
Mm,
is nowadays through like reading books, just kind of for having fun, to have fun. Playing like old video games that I used to play as a child, which didn't have like those long sort of you can't speed up those games and things like that. They're very slow games.
they
So
are slow in general. Yeah. Mm,
building the bricks from there. But slowness makes me feel like angry. So working on that.
got it. I think you could probably start with like 5 minutes, then 10, then 15.
Yep.
Because like I remember my first time, 5 minutes felt like a decade. But
Yeah.
now I'm like with practice, now I'm able to like meditate for like 30 minutes just sitting there and like just observing the funniness in my thoughts and then like the kind of thoughts that I
I
have.
love
So
that.
something fun,
I love
something
that.
fun
Yeah,
to
definitely. I'll
definitely
create
try.
my
Yeah.
my plan and I'll do that because it helps to hear stories like this too. And the way that you're
Correct.
describing, like I love how you said your thoughts are funny and you observe them.
A piece of advice that you would give to someone who is maybe an athlete or like aspires to become an athlete, uh, maybe like to take care of their mental health, to
Hmm.
prepare their mindset, which you have done yourself or you think someone can do.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good question. I'm gonna think about that because that's important. Um, I would say try and find joy in what you're doing and try and kind of enjoy the sport, enjoy moving your body, enjoy what it does for you, and try and separate that from maybe the external achievements that come from it, like the medals or the recognition
Hmm.
or things like that.
Hmm. Hmm, hmm.
Those are good reasons for you to find happiness in the sport, like
Right.
totally okay if
Hmm.
you do. and also find joy in the process. Like, find friends through sport, play a lot, like, find time where you can kind of practice the sport in an unstructured way, like even outside of coaching, if you want to just play with your friends, that's also a beautiful way to do it. And find people who energize you rather than who kind of drain you out.
Dream not.
And that
Love that.
will
Yes.
be, you'll be happy. Like always, happy athlete is a good athlete.
It's like we hear it so often, and it is like enjoying the process is something that we hear so often, but it is
Yeah.
like often difficult to like
Oh yeah.
do it because us as human beings are like very result oriented,
Yep.
and then like to separate out and then to like focus on, oh, I'm doing this, why?
Hmm.
Because I love it as well. So I think that is what you highlighted of like enjoying the sport, enjoying what you're doing,
Yeah.
than just focusing on the results. Love it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, you said that super well, because that's something that I often talk about with athletes, is kind of finding your why. And a lot of athletes, most of them would have entered their sport because they just enjoy doing it, whatever the sport
Right.
might be, rather than saying,
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
going to like achieve this, achieve that. So that
Correct.
why is something that really anchors you in
Mm.
sort of
And
that pure
yes.
love that your younger
Yep.
self would have started off with.
Definitely. Okay. Last question
Yes.
to Malvika. From Malvika to Malvika, if 18-year-old Malvika were standing in front of you, uh, maybe when you were at the crossroads and if of your life, what is that one thing that you would love to say to her right now?
Mm, I love this question. It's beautiful. I would say hang in there. Uh, the place where you're at right now, there are so many more questions than there are answers. Like, you're in a fully new country and you're so brave for like doing that. That's crazy that you did that at 18 years old. Like, I can't
Yeah,
imagine doing that now. Uh,
definitely. Yeah.
so, she's super, super brave and so talented. And all of the things that she's like nervous about or like stressed out about are things that will settle. They are things that she will find answers to, and find friends along the way, find mentors along the way who will kind of guide her through that. So she's gonna be okay.
Hang in there. You're gonna be amazing.
Yep, yep. Amazing. I don't know, but like you'll be fine.
I can say you are amazing. Yeah, definitely.
Thanks. Oh, I
Okay.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming to the podcast, sharing your experience, speaking about mental health, not just as in general, but now also into like sports psychology, how it affects you. I feel this is helping it become more woke as a concept, spreading awareness in the
Mm.
society. So thank you so much and really appreciate you accepting and coming on this episode, Malvika.
Sure, sure. Thanks so much, Saurabh. Like, you were a lovely host and you asked such good questions, and I really enjoyed sharing your experiences with you as well. And yeah, you were just so thoughtful in the way that you put it across. So I enjoyed myself completely. Like,
Thank
whatever
you so
nerves I
much.
had are
That
gone.
means a lot.